Hi everyone! I have a neat vintage watch that you will be hard-pressed to find anywhere, and it's this Mido. We are calling it New York World's Fair, and you'll see why, if you haven't figured it out from the look of the dial by now. Right away, the dial is what stands out to me. Aside from the prominently written out World's Fair, initials NY, and 1939, it has a type of schematic of what looks like a street, and I think I'm not too far off. This Mido was made to commemorate the World's Fair of New York in 1939. I'll briefly talk about the World's Fair before I dive into the details of the watch. The World's Fair of New York was the largest event of its time, attracting visitors with the theme, The World of Tomorrow, proudly stating, a new and clearer view of today in preparation for tomorrow. Exhibits spanning food, health, business, industry, and science. Essentially all topics that involve human day-to-day living, plus amusement areas with bars, restaurants, dance floors, rides, and more. Imagine the grandeur of this event. Enough for President Franklin D. Roosevelt to formally open with a speech and the Queen of England to attend. Foreign countries also participated in the exhibitions, so it's not surprising that a Swiss company made a watch in connection to the event. The fair took place after the Great Depression and the start of World War II. This is significant because rationing efforts for the war was made priority. It even affected some countries to pull out of the fair. There's a lot more that can be said about the fair itself, but now onto the watch itself. I previously mentioned a schematic of sorts depicted on the silver dial, and I've identified two elements from photos that I'm posting for you to see. Can you spot them too? What we see are two monumental structures that became the central symbol of the fair, the Trilon and the Perisphere. These two monumental structures were created to depict the modern aesthetic and eventually became the central symbol of the fair. The obelisk spans nearly the entire height of the dial and represents the Trilon. Mido cleverly integrated its subsidiary second style as the Perisphere. There's actually a third element that is more subtle and encircles the Perisphere. The helicline, a spiral ramp where people exited the sphere. I'm not able to discern the rest of the figures on the dial. I try to compare it to the fair's map I posted on the screen for you to see because I thought they could represent a general layout of the fair, the pavilions, the main fountain, or streets, but could not make out any other landmark. They could also be an interpretation of space-age motif, which is on par with imagination of the future concept. I did notice the sketch is all neatly confined within an outer circle. The letters World's Fair circling the perimeter serve as the hour markers and are flanked by a dot, of which I almost missed because they camouflage well within the graphic. I noticed an overall balance of proportion, the words written in all four corners outside of the circle. The watch case itself is reminiscent of a precursor to brutalistic design, which is on theme with the slogan of the fair, since brutalism didn't begin until the 1950s. The heavily grooved edges of the 26mm case come across austere, a juxtaposition to the dial's illustration, while the crown sits close. The grooves could also be thought to resemble edges of an old postage stamp. I can see an outline of a stamp if I look head-on. The corners are also grooved, not a perfect 90-degree, just like a postage stamp. The lugs are thick and angled downwards. I noticed the side view maintains the balance of proportions I mentioned before. The glass crystal looks nearly close to the same height as the case back, measuring 7mm thick overall. The inner case back is stamped rustless steel and stay bright, and interestingly enough, a 1/1. And remember, materials were being rationed and this included steel. The watch is powered by a Mido caliber 240 17 joules hand-wide movement. Mido Limited is stamped on the movement and the initials SXC, which we know to be the importation code. I had trouble finding any kind of reference to the specific Mido because it is rare. We are pretty sure it was crafted in 1939 in celebration of the World's Fair and is in beautiful condition. It has not been polished. It is possible the watch was a display piece hosted at the Swiss pavilion or sold later on. Like I said, there's nothing on this piece we could find, but there are records that Mido had participated in the event. I think it looks fantastic on my wrist. and appears to be one of a kind. If anyone has any knowledge on this Mido or can point out other details that I've missed, I would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching.